Imagine this. You are a quiet observer in a world that clamors for attention. You notice the subtle shifts in light, the unspoken anxieties in a room, the way a person's eyes betray their true feelings. You offer thoughtful insights, your words carefully chosen, yet they often seem to dissolve into the air, unheard, unacknowledged. Does this resonate with a quiet ache deep within your soul? The quiet ache of being overlooked is not merely a fleeting discomfort. It is a profound wound that often festers in the hidden corners of the psyche, leaving one to question their very existence and value. It is the silent sorrow of contribution uncelebrated, of presence unperceived, and of efforts unseen. This is the first echo of a universal human experience, a testament to the fundamental human need for recognition, for being truly seen. Consider Alara, a woman whose life had always been a masterclass in quiet competence. From childhood, she was the steady hand, the thoughtful confidant, the one who ensured everything ran smoothly behind the scenes. In her family, her older brother, Liam, was the boisterous star, his achievements celebrated with fanfare, his every pronouncement met with rapt attention. Alara, meanwhile, would meticulously plan their mother's surprise birthday parties, coordinate family vacations, and silently mediate sibling squabbles, only to watch Liam effortlessly charm his way into the spotlight, often receiving accolades for the collective effort. She remembered one Christmas when she had spent weeks knitting an intricate scarf for her grandmother, only for her grandmother to exclaim, "Oh, Liam, how wonderful of you to pick out such a thoughtful gift." Alara's smile had faltered, a familiar tremor of disappointment rippling through her. She had simply nodded, her voice caught in her throat. "It doesn't matter, it's just a scarf," she had told herself, but the quiet ache had settled deeper. As Alara matured, this pattern extended into her professional life. She was an architect, brilliant in her designs, meticulous in her calculations, and renowned among her small circle of colleagues for her innovative, sustainable solutions. Yet, in larger firm meetings, her male counterparts, often less experienced but more vocal, would present her ideas as their own, or simply talk over her nuanced explanations. There was a particular incident during a pitch for a major urban development project. Alara had spent months researching, sketching, and refining a revolutionary eco-friendly design that seamlessly integrated green spaces with modern infrastructure. Her presentation slides were works of art, her data unimpeachable. During the meeting, however, Mr. Harrison, the senior partner, a man known for his booming voice and penchant for self-aggrandizement, took center stage. He presented Alara's core concepts as if they were his own spontaneous insights, occasionally gesturing vaguely towards her in acknowledgement, a dismissive flick of his wrist. Alara sat there, her heart pounding a silent rhythm of indignation and despair. She wanted to interject, to scream, "Those are my ideas!" But the words remained trapped, suffocated by years of internalizing the message that her voice wasn't as important, wasn't as compelling. Her colleague, Sarah, sitting next to her, squeezed her arm sympathetically. Alara forced a tight smile, the familiar quiet ache intensifying into a dull throb behind her eyes. Later, Mr. Harrison received all the credit, and the firm lauded him for his visionary leadership. Alara received a modest bonus and a fleeting, almost apologetic nod from her direct supervisor. "Good work, Alara," he'd muttered, already turning away. "Is this all I am? A silent engine for other people's glory?" She wondered, the thought a burning ember in her mind. This constant pattern of being overlooked began to erode Alara's sense of self-worth. She started to internalize the narrative that her contributions were inherently less valuable simply because they weren't loudly proclaimed or publicly recognized. She found herself retreating, becoming even quieter, even more meticulous in her work, hoping that sheer excellence would eventually force acknowledgement. But it never did. The more she strove for perfection in the shadows, the deeper the shadows became. Her dreams began to feature her as a blurry, indistinct figure, a ghost in her own life, desperately trying to catch someone's eye, to make herself solid, only to find hands passing right through her. One evening, After another day where her efforts had been absorbed into the collective without so much as a mention, Alara found herself staring at her reflection. Her eyes, usually bright with intellectual curiosity, seemed dim, clouded with a profound sadness. A chilling thought, almost a whisper from her deepest self, echoed in her mind. Am I even here? It was a moment of stark realization, a precipice of self-erasure. The quiet ache had become a pervasive numbness, a subtle desolation that threatened to consume her. She had become so accustomed to being a background character that she no longer knew how to step into the foreground, even for herself. Her inner critic, a shadow lurking in the recesses of her mind, relentlessly whispered, "You're not enough. You're invisible because you are invisible." This internal monologue, a form of self-sabotage rooted in years of unacknowledged experience, cemented her conviction that her true self was meant to remain hidden. The feeling of being perpetually undervalued had constructed an invisible wall around her, isolating her not just from others' recognition, but also from her own inherent brilliance. Alara's journey exemplifies the shadow work that becomes crucial when one experiences the quiet ache of being overlooked. Her internal struggle with self-worth, her retreat into the background, and the way she allowed others to project their own desires for credit onto her, are classic manifestations of an unintegrated shadow, the parts of herself she deemed unworthy of expression. She embodies an archetype often referred to as the unseen contributor, a figure whose true power lies in their depth and quiet strength, yet who struggles to bring that strength into the light due to societal conditioning and personal patterns of suppression. Her theme is one of unacknowledged excellence and the profound psychological toll it takes. For those who find themselves in Alara's shoes, the path to healing begins with a conscious decision to reclaim your narrative. You must understand that your worth is not contingent on external validation. You possess an intrinsic value that no oversight, no stolen credit, can diminish. To begin unraveling this quiet ache, consider this. What aspects of your own brilliance are you keeping hidden? Perhaps because you've been conditioned to believe they won't be seen or appreciated. Begin by acknowledging your own contributions, however small they may seem. Keep a journal of your achievements, your insights, your quiet victories. This isn't about bragging. It's about building an internal archive of your worth, a counter-narrative to the societal tendency to overlook you. Recognize that the ego projection of others, their need to take credit, their inability to see beyond their own self-interest, is a reflection of their own internal landscape, not a judgment of your capabilities. Your task is not to change their perception, but to solidify your own. Cultivate a sense of stoicism in the face of external slights. Understand that your peace comes from within, not from the fleeting applause of others. As Marcus Aurelius might have advised, focus on what is within your control, your effort, your integrity, your self-perception. The external world, with its often unjust distribution of recognition, is largely outside your direct influence. Begin to gently, yet firmly, assert your presence. This doesn't mean becoming loud or aggressive, but rather finding ways to articulate your ideas, to claim your contributions, even if it's just a quiet statement of, "I contributed to this in a meeting." Remember, true power lies in authentic self-expression, not in the clamor for external recognition. Your voice, however soft, holds immense power when it speaks your truth. The quiet ache of being overlooked, while deeply personal, often stems from a collective societal narrative that champions outward success and visible achievement above all else. This brings us to the second, often insidious aspect of being overlooked, the way it subtly distorts our perception of self-worth, leading us to believe we are somehow less deserving of love, attention, or success. The greatest discovery of my generation is that a human being can alter his life by altering his attitudes, proclaimed William James, the father of American psychology. His profound insight resonates deeply with the experience of the overlooked, for it is not merely the external lack of recognition that wounds, but the internal capitulation to the belief that one's intrinsic value diminishes without it. This internal shift, this quiet erosion of self, is where the true battle lies. Consider the pervasive influence of social comparison, amplified exponentially in our hyper-connected world. Sarah, a gifted artist, spent countless hours honing her craft, pouring her soul into vibrant canvases that spoke volumes without a single word. Yet, her early attempts to share her work online were met with a resounding silence, while algorithmic feeds constantly paraded the dazzling, immediate successes of others. Influencers with mediocre talent but masterful self-promotion garnered millions of likes, comments, and lucrative sponsorships. Sarah, with her quiet integrity and genuine passion, found herself scrolling through endless feeds, a knot tightening in her stomach. Why them and not me? Am I not good enough? Is my art not worthy? The comparison was a cruel mirror, reflecting back not her undeniable talent, but the hollow space where external validation should have been. This constant exposure to curated perfection, juxtaposed with her own perceived invisibility, began to chip away at her artistic confidence. She started to doubt her unique voice, questioning if perhaps she should create more marketable art, even if it meant sacrificing the raw authenticity that defined her. This internal struggle, a profound misalignment between her authentic self and the perceived demands of the external world, slowly stifled her creativity. This struggle is precisely what Albert Bandura's theory of self-efficacy illuminates. Sarah's initial self-efficacy in her artistic abilities, once robust, began to wane as her efforts yielded no visible external reward. Her belief in her capacity to produce desired effects, to create art that resonated with others and gained recognition, was undermined by the absence of positive reinforcement. She experienced a form of learned helplessness, a quiet resignation to her perceived fate of being unseen. The subtle yet potent power of this phenomenon is that it doesn't just make you feel bad. It actively inhibits your future actions, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy of continued oversight. What's the point? No one will see it anyway. This internal monologue, reinforced by the lack of external validation, became a powerful deterrent to further creative expression, a subtle form of self-sabotage that masqueraded as realism. Furthermore, the lens through which we interpret this lack of recognition is heavily influenced by our early experiences, a concept Freud would readily explore through the intricate workings of the unconscious mind. Perhaps in childhood, our attempts to gain parental approval were often met with distraction or dismissiveness. A child who repeatedly brings their drawings to a busy parent only to have them glanced at cursorily and then set aside learns, unconsciously, that their creative output, and by extension, their inner world, is not truly valued. This establishes a template, a schema, for how they interact with the world and interpret its responses. For Sarah, a quiet child who often sought approval through academic achievements, the artistic realm was her sanctuary, a place where she felt truly alive. Yet, when this sanctuary too failed to garner the external validation she unconsciously craved, it triggered deep-seated fears of inadequacy rooted in those early experiences of subtle neglect. The ache of being overlooked in the present resonated with the unresolved echoes of the past, making the current experience feel amplified and deeply personal. It tapped into a core wound, a feeling of not being enough simply as she was. The collective unconscious, as Jung posited, also plays a role. In many cultures, the archetype of the hero is celebrated, the one who overcomes obstacles, achieves greatness, and receives public acclaim. For those who quietly contribute, whose efforts are foundational rather than overtly dramatic, there is no readily available archetype to embody and validate their experience. This societal void can leave the overlooked feeling as if they are somehow failing to live up to an unspoken, ubiquitous ideal, further exacerbating the quiet ache. They are caught in a cultural script that often overlooks the subtle, the steady, and the sustained, in favor of the flashy, the immediate, and the celebrated. This insidious erosion of self-worth is not a moral failing. It is a psychological consequence of operating in systems that often fail to recognize diverse forms of contribution. It highlights the crucial need for individuation, the lifelong process of integrating the conscious and unconscious to form a more whole and unique self. For Sarah, this meant moving beyond the collective unconscious's narrow definition of success and embracing her own authentic artistic journey, irrespective of external metrics. It required a profound act of self-love and self-acceptance, a conscious rejection of the narrative that her value was tied to the number of likes or followers she accumulated. The journey to healing from this quiet erosion of self-worth demands a radical shift in perspective. It calls for you to become your own primary source of validation. Recognize that the world's oversight does not diminish your intrinsic worth. Your value is not a commodity to be traded for applause or recognition. It is an inherent quality of your being. Embrace the wisdom of Carl Rogers, who emphasized unconditional positive regard, not from others, but from yourself. Can you offer yourself the same compassion and acceptance that you would offer a cherished friend? Can you see your efforts, your contributions, your unique spirit, and affirm them even when no one else does? This is the core of true self-worth, a foundation unshakable by external storms. Begin to actively engage in practices that reinforce your inherent value. Journaling about your strengths, celebrating small personal victories, engaging in mindfulness to connect with your inner self, these are not trivial acts. They are acts of profound self-care and rebellion against a system that seeks to define you by what it chooses to see. Your emotional behavior, often a reactive response to external stimuli, can be consciously reshaped by cultivating an internal locus of control. You are not a passive recipient of the world's gaze. You are the architect of your own self-perception. In the quiet solitude, begin to build an inner sanctuary where your worth is undeniably, unconditionally, and irrevocably recognized. The quiet ache of being overlooked, in its deepest manifestation, often culminates in a profound yearning for authenticity, a desperate desire to be seen not just for what one does, but for who one truly is. This brings us to the final, transformative aspect of this experience: the journey towards self-reclamation, a process of shedding the invisible cloak of invisibility and stepping into the vibrant tapestry of one's own being. It's a profound echo of Carl Jung's concept of individuation, the lifelong psychological process of differentiating the self from the collective unconscious and developing one's unique personality. It's the ultimate act of self-love, a rebellion against the subtle erasure of one's true essence. Consider the ancient tale of Echo, a nymph cursed by Hera to only repeat the last words spoken to her. She falls deeply in love with Narcissus, but can only reflect his words back to him. He, consumed by his own image, never truly sees her, never truly hears her own voice, her own desires. Echo wastes away until only her voice remains, forever repeating the words of others. This myth, a potent allegory, speaks directly to the experience of the overlooked. For too long, many have been like Echo, their identities defined by the reflections of others' expectations, their voices merely an echo of societal norms or the pronouncements of those who hold power. The quiet ache intensifies when one realizes they have been living a life not fully their own, their unique melody stifled by the cacophony of others' narratives. This is where the transformative power of shadow work becomes paramount. The parts of ourselves we suppress, our authentic desires, our unconventional thoughts, our perceived flaws, our fierce strengths, because they don't align with what we believe will be seen or accepted, accumulate in the shadow. For those who feel overlooked, the shadow often contains a fiery individuality, a potent creative force, or a deeply insightful wisdom that has been intentionally dimmed to avoid discomfort or rejection. It's the part of you that whispers, "I want to be recognized for this, not just for being agreeable," or "My worth isn't tied to how many people notice me." Ignoring these whispers only deepens the quiet ache, as the suppressed self yearns for expression, often manifesting as anxiety, depression, or a pervasive sense of emptiness. Imagine then a different path, that of Lyra, a woman who had, for years, worn the mantle of the good daughter, the reliable employee, the easygoing friend. She was perpetually accommodating, her opinions often softened, her needs perpetually secondary. Her quiet nature was often mistaken for compliance, her thoughtful silence for agreement. In her early career as a graphic designer, she would spend painstaking hours on projects, infusing them with her unique artistic vision, only to have a male colleague present her designs as collaborative efforts, subtly downplaying her lead role. Lyra would nod, smile, and internally seethe, the familiar quiet ache intensifying into a dull roar. Why can't I speak up? Why am I so afraid to claim what's mine? This internal dialogue was a constant battle, a manifestation of her own internalized beliefs about what it meant to be seen and valued. Often, in her experience, It meant being agreeable and non-confrontational. The turning point for Lyra came during a company retreat, a particularly grueling brainstorming session where her ideas were, yet again, dismissed or co-opted. As she sat there, the familiar numbness creeping in, a memory from her childhood flashed through her mind. She was 5 years old, meticulously building a complex Lego castle, a masterpiece of her own imagination. Her older brother, observing her focused intensity, had come over, casually kicked a crucial tower, and laughed. "That's stupid, Lyra." Her mother, noticing her tears, had simply said, "Oh, don't mind him, he's just playing." The message, etched deeply into her subconscious, was clear. Her creations, her efforts, her very essence could be easily dismissed and her feelings invalidated. This early experience, unexamined, had molded her into the good girl who avoided confrontation at all costs, fearing that any expression of her true self would lead to similar dismissal. In that moment at the retreat, however, something shifted. It wasn't a sudden explosion of anger, but a quiet, resolute spark. "This ends now," a voice whispered within her, not a voice of rage, but one of profound conviction. It was the stirrings of her anima, the feminine principle within her, urging her to reclaim her emotional depth and intuitive power. She decided, then and there, to embark on her own individuation journey. She began with small acts of self-reclamation. In meetings, she started to preface her ideas with, "My proposal is," or "I developed this concept," initially with a tremor in her voice, but with growing confidence. She sought out a therapist who guided her through trauma psychology, helping her understand how those early experiences had shaped her avoidance of confrontation and her tendency to self-erase. She learned about ego projection, recognizing that her colleague's need to take credit was a reflection of his insecurities, not a measure of her inadequacy. Lyra also began to engage in practices that fostered her internal power. She started painting again, not for external validation, but for the sheer joy of creation. She practiced mindfulness and meditation, learning to sit with the quiet discomfort of her own emotions rather than suppressing them. She explored Stoicism, finding strength in the understanding that while she couldn't control how others perceived her, she could control her own response, her own self-worth. She realized that the quiet ache wasn't about others seeing her. It was about her seeing herself fully, authentically, and without apology. The shift was internal, profound. She no longer sought external applause. She sought inner resonance. And paradoxically, as she began to embody her authentic self, with all its quiet strength and vibrant creativity, others began to truly see her, not because she demanded it, but because she radiated it. Her confidence wasn't performative. It was an emanation of her integrated self. This journey to self-reclamation is about dismantling the internal narratives that keep you small and unseen. It's about recognizing that the quiet ache is a powerful signal, an invitation to turn inward and discover the vast, rich landscape of your own being. You are not a ghost in your own life. You are a vibrant, multifaceted individual with unique gifts and an invaluable presence. The climax of this journey isn't external recognition, but a profound internal release, a letting go of the desperate need for validation, and a peaceful, powerful rebirth of your authentic self. Embrace practices that connect you to your inner world. Walking in nature, engaging in creative pursuits, writing, or simply sitting in quiet contemplation. These aren't just hobbies. They are acts of profound self-love, pathways to knowing and honoring the incredible person you are, independent of external noise. Your internal power transforms your world, shifting negative thoughts to positive affirmations, not through forced optimism, but through genuine self-acceptance. The ending of this journey isn't a fanfare. It's a profound stillness, a deep breath of belonging to yourself. It's the realization that the most important recognition comes from within. The quiet ache dissipates, replaced by a quiet strength, a vibrant self-acceptance that radiates outwards, subtly shifting how the world perceives you, and more importantly, how you perceive yourself. What aspect of your authentic self are you ready to reclaim today? If you found this exploration resonant, or see yourself in Lyra's journey, Please leave a like, subscribe, and comment to help our channel feel from you. And if you know someone who needs this video, please send them this video as a necessary share. Thanks for watching. The end.